Honorable Mr. Howard Brown, Senator from Parliament, Antigua and Barbuda. Saniel Arabiel Kalk, Councilor from Belize. Honorable Mr. Frederick Costier, Environmental Ministry from Dominica Parliament. Parliamentarians from Dominica. Honorable Humphrey Chester Arlington, former President, Syndicalist, General President from Allied Workers from Grenada. Honorable Alex Morgan, Senator from Las Malvinas. Parliamentarians from the United States of Mexico presented here. Honorable Mr. Edgar Arthur Six Pachan, Deputy from Guatemala Republic. Honorable Mr. Bartolo Antonio Fuentes, Deputy from the National Congress from Honduras, parliamentarians from the National Congress from Honduras, representatives, member from the Directive Joint from the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela, Deputy Luz Eloy Martínez, Vice President from the Dialogue and the National Council from Sovereignty and Peace, Deputy Ernesto Maduro Guerra, also representative of the National Council from Venezuela for Sovereignty and Peace, Deputy Timoteo Zambrano, President of the Permanent Commission of Foreign Policy. Of course, it was not written here because it's always has to be like this. Yeah, and our Foreign Minister, our brother, Dr. Ivan Hill, who is not a deputy, but is the Foreign Minister, and he's a special guest in this meeting today. On January 2014, there was a select summit in the beautiful city of Havana, where in a historical way, countries members from SELAC, that institution, full of the dream of Fidel Castro and Hugo Chavez and the effort of all the leaders from the American continent to promote unity of our country, to promote peace, and to promote the defense of our integration and sovereignty, we approved a historical agreement that declared the Caribbean and the country from the Caribbean a peace zone and a peace free from nuclear weapons. There were times of hope and also times of real integration from the American countries with all institutions that were emerging among people that were equal countries that for the first time arrived to this new century looking the possibilities to grow and prosperity of their peoples. And justly, this declaration from SELAC that is being threatened in a brutal way in the current times, in a sea that is the Mare Nostrum, as Romans said, for the American country, that is the Caribbean Sea. A sea where also was drawn and designed, collaborated for our Libertador Simón Bolívar get his dreams of liberation of this continent. It was in Jamaica where the Libertador wrote the Road of Jamaica, the independence letter, and Haiti gave the enough support for his travel for this independence of this continent. In the current times, there is over our heads from Venezuela with the open intention to promote a change of regime that allows the United States government to take over the richness of our country that belongs to the people from Venezuela. That is the core of the thing. That is the truth. The real truth. We don't have to wait that in next years, next decades, they declassify document that said that the real intention that they pursue this current administration was to take hold of the oil, the minery with the strange lands of this Venezuela country. But it's not only Venezuela. It is all the Caribbean countries. All North American countries are threatened, but USA, of course, Central America and South America, because he pretends to be the world policeman. That is the deployment, the brutal deployment that is close to the coast at the north of Venezuela, the Caribbean, the closer Caribbean, close to Venezuela. They pretend that they are the real executioners of killings, extrajudicial killings, without any kind of trial in these blowing-ups of small ships, boats in the Caribbean, with weapons that are huge for these boats, using arguing the alleged argument that they are narcotraffickers, without proof, without any kind of judicial actions, violating the United Nations Charter, violating the Universal Charter of Human Rights and all treatments dealing with the rights of the sea, the right to assist people in the sea, with not even showing a single proof about reasons to do that. They have killed more than 30 people, human beings, not asking if they were in any illegal or legal action. They presume. And all human beings in this planet should have the right to a just trial and to defense. Not only all of this is denying, but they are promoting a kind of situation. They are promoting an action where it's going to be natural to attack the country's sovereignty, that it is natural to change the freedom of our to do commercial trade activities of our countries by the sea, that every country has the right to do, arguing not because of the consequences that they have to the human beings or the countries of this continent or the whole planet. The advocates that the damages that these kind of substances do to the people. No, we are conscious what means for the first consumer of cocaine in the planet, that are the United States of America. What means in health, in the health way, in social distortions, the presence of drugs in USA. We are aware of that, but we ask from here, from this meeting of parliamentarians for peace that are in here, where peace diplomacy will impose it, and we are more united. What is the U.S. government doing with the topic of traffic of drugs in USA? How is the seizment of these drugs in USA? Where does the money, narcotraffic money, goes that of course it is generated in USA, because if there is drug trafficking, it means that there is a lucrative traffic because generate benefits, economical benefit, because they have, Petro has said many times that money doesn't go to the Latin American country. That money doesn't go to feed the vaults of the poor in Latin America. That money is kept in the big financial center in USA and fiscal paradise in Europe and other countries in the world. And the real narco traffickers, the ones that are become millionaire, lives in the United States of America or live in Europe. They are tired about saying that this is an operation against narco traffic, and it comes about that the biggest amount of drug that goes to USA doesn't go through the Caribbean Sea. It is a drug that goes through the Pacific Ocean. After that, it is distributed by the centers that there are inside the USA of America. It is an excuse. It is a lie. And it's not the first time that they do something like this. From times of main ship that generated a war and an invasion on the side of United States, what to say about Tom King episode, the first day in August 1964, when they invented and then they made it up, and after 30 years that it was not true, that there was not such an attack against an American ship, but they grow the presence of troops in Vietnam that unchained that horrible war that conducted the Vietnamese people a victory against the most powerful army in the world. A small country, but very, very courageous, that kneel the army of the most powerful army in the world. But they needed that war, and that's why they said they made up that attack to the ship. Or 2004, they said in USA that there was massive destruction weapons in Iraq, and they showed almost a ridiculous opposite of the alleged weapons of this massive destructive weapons that generated a war. Then they say it was fake. These weapons were fake. They are leading to a similar way of acting, the same characteristic, making up that this barbarian deployment in the Caribbean waters, it is an operation against drug trafficking. It is not. They are trying to attack the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela, the Caribbean countries, and to put under their feet from the people that are governing the United States of America, a government that denies to kneel in front of the empire, a continent that began the 21st century with the hope. We need hopes of the redemption of the poor people in Latin America and the ones who are trying to live in this region. We are a region that was declared in peace. We are a region that has kept in peace in spite of all the attacks that have received. We'll be here hours speaking about all things that have done this presence of USA and its government with this tendency, permanent tendencies to attack, to invade. we would be hours in here talking about it. But the most important thing, it is to be dedicated in this moment in Caracas to exchange all our positions, our opinions, our stance, to get closer, all the parliaments, to unite it, and with only one voice, say the word and insist in our predication that the Caribbean should be a permanent region of peace. The Caribbean to be free from nuclear weapons, and the armies, the imperial armies, do not attack or escalate aggressions against any countries in Latin America or Caribbean. Welcome, all of you, to Caracas cities. On the contrary to what they are saying on the media of the psychological war, that the powerful from the West, it is a city in peace. It is a city where its people, and all cities in Venezuela, its people are fully committed with the Venezuelan unity. Christmas that are long Christmas. And also, it is a people that got its own way, in spite of being like Cuba, like Nicaragua, like Russia, like Iran, besieged by more than 1,000 sanctions against its economy and against the leaders. In spite of all this, Venezuela found the way to recovery, economic recovery. We found a way to recover and to heal the weapons, to heal the ones of this war, this economic measures. Maybe because of that, because we are defeated to overcome many of the aggression because due to that sanctions now they are with another kind of aggression, of course more dangerous. In this meeting there will come out only one voice, only one action, the action that leads us to preserve peace and the future, the independence, sovereignty, and prosperity of our country. Thank you. Welcomes everybody.
Bien, han escuchado ustedes las palabras de bienvenida del presidente del Parlamento venezolano, doctor Jorge Rodríguez, a los distintos voceros que se encuentran acá en esta reunión de parlamentarias y parlamentarios del Caribe por la Paz.
Muy buenos días.
Good morning,
Estimados, estimadas
dear parliamentarians,
jefes de delegación, jefes de
uh,
parlamento,
chiefs of delegations,
señor Jorge
Rodriguez,
presidente
President
de nuestra Asamblea
of
Nacional,
our National Assembly. Thank you for inviting me.
al Poder Ejecutivo,
Thank you for having me. Thank you for
colega y amigo
dear
Denis Moncada,
colleague and friend Denis Moncada,
en la República
Ministry of Foreign Affairs in Nicaragua.
Quiero,
I
en
want,
nombre del Poder
on behalf
Ejecutivo,
of the
del presidente constitucional
executive power,
Maduro Moro,
and on behalf of our President Nicolas Maduro, to
al cuerpo parlamentario por esta invitación, por permitirnos
thank you for sharing
breves palabras,
these few words
darle, por supuesto, la calurosa bienvenida
and give a warm welcome
a la patria
all of you to our country, revolutionary and Chavez country, that today is,
que hoy y desde hace
and since 26 years, is having a battle,
más importante de su
the most important battle from the history, Republican history.
frente a una coyuntura
We are facing a joint
delicada, muy especial,
that is very special,
inusual,
with a presence, extraordinary presence,
extravagante, como ha dicho el presidente,
extravagant has also, as our president has said,
militar,
of the military fleet, warships,
submarinos
nuclear submarine,
misiles,
missiles,
tropas que llaman de élite,
troops, elite troops, as they call them,
central de inteligencia,
with the CIA
anunciada públicamente
announced
en Venezuela como
publicly
supiéramos
their operation as if we were not aware that they have been in here 26 years trying to overrule this country. All this is a resume, or is the high think of a large list of actions, aggressive action, hostile actions against the Bolivarian people, against the revolution, against the Bolivarian government, that began at the beginning, as they were denounced by the commander Hugo Chavez at his time and Nicolas Maduro and the current times. They were denounced, and they will be keep on denounced as an aggressive and hostile policy that began with demolishing this government and began with media wars, with speaking about the intentions of our government and looking at the bettering the wellness of our people, and they were escalating till producing overthrows, sanctions. They have taken now, supported by these European satellites, to all resources that they have at hand to hurt us, as they have done against Cuba too, with a criminal blockade for more than 60 years, and as they have done with Cuba, they couldn't just fulfill their objective. And today, they are giving another step in a new Iran maneuver, that is the threat of using force. All what we have narrated, it is against the international rights, against the Charter of the United Nations, the sovereignty, the independence. But maybe today we are facing the most serious action, not because of the consequences that it could have on the Bolivarian Revolution or on our destiny. We know that we have going to keep on our march. We are ready for that, with our president in front, because we have the biggest unity of these people in the last 200 years of Republican life. It is what we have today. More than 95% of the people is perfectly united around our revolution to defend the homeland, to defend our sovereignty. That's why we are not afraid that they can bend our willingness, that we decided to be free. But as Dr. Jorge Rodriguez said, President of the National Assembly, there could be terrible consequences to all the region, to destabilization of this zone that we declared in 2014 as a peace zone. Maybe that's the first consequences that we could live if a military intervention was decided in a responsible way on the side of USA, or on the side of this government of USA. And it was not Venezuela the one who's going to pay the hardest consequence of an intervention of this kind. We are speaking about our neighbor countries, Colombia, the Caribbean, Brazil, the Guyana itself, Trinidad, that Trinidad of Tobago that is threatening us and has assumed a work position. They are going to suffer the most tragic situation, because we are ready in a perfect union, civic, military, and policial, but with a historical sense, homeland sense, to keep on this path of the Bolivarian Revolution under any circumstances. But we should warn that that is why this meeting of parliamentarians of Caribbean for Peace parliamentary. That is important of this because as a region we have seen in all international forums the Caribbean countries has spoken. The big majority of countries, of the governments, of our community have spoken, have asked to stop aggressions. They have asked for respect of the international rights, the sovereignty of our country, and the United Nations Charter. And so the majority of the government in the Caribbean, not to say the whole people of the Caribbean, of the Latin American countries had raised their voices, even beyond. The big majority of the North American people have raised their voice against this aggression and against the threat against a free country like Venezuela. So we are defending what the majority is asking, what the majority is claiming. People from our whole America, including United States itself. But for us, it is our right to defend the American people. And you, like parliamentarians, like leaders of lawmaking institution of this great Caribbean and this North and South America, that is also Caribbean, you have a big responsibility to keep the voice of those peoples in an active way, to mobilize actively to demand the end of this aggression. Not only the military presence, but also all kind of aggression that they have tried to impose to us. And to leave the Caribbean countries to go through the path of the definite liberation and our willingness to build our independent destiny, a sovereign destiny. 2 days ago, we were seeing, I want to congratulate the Cuban people, the diplomacy, their ministries, to the President Díaz-Canel, to the General Raúl Castro, or the Foreign Minister Bruno, to reach a victory in the United Nations that was very important, I would say, because Cuba has gotten a victory that is ours, that is a victory of all Caribbean countries, of all people in the world, as President Nicolás Maduro said. Amidst this miserable campaign that we could say from the diplomatic point of view, with a diplomatic machinery that wants the war, the biggest, powerful, destructive conscience, to avoid using diplomacy, to avoid people say their willingness of this end of the blockade. When we are asking about the end of this blockade, we are asking about the aggressions of all countries in the world. And it has been clear which is the willingness of governments in the government of the countries in the world, the peace will of this region. I want that these things that we're going to do today under the lead of our National Assembly of the Venezuelan Republic go out the biggest of the recommendation and the route to guide our people to the victory. As we have said, and the President has said, our victory will always be the peace of this region. We will defend the peace with the resources we have, that are a lot, because the main resources are people, and you are representative of those peoples from the Caribbean. You are representative of those people from the Caribbean, from here, from the indomitable Caracas. We should mark this fact to defeat, take away from the Caribbean the military presence, the presence of nuclear weapons, carriers, and to go together from prosperity and sovereignty. Welcome, all of you, on behalf of Nicolás Maduro, and we want you to follow in keeping on the pathway, on independence way, sovereign way, and our revolution.
Those were the words of Iván Gil, Foreign Minister of Venezuela. We were hearing him at this Greater Caribbean Parliamentarians Meeting for Peace that receives parliamentarians and representatives from different countries in the Caribbean precisely to defend the situation in the Caribbean Sea. One single nation with one link. And the links between the parts and the everything. Those are the words of Simón Bolívar in the letter to Jamaica. Misters parliamentarians, foreign ministers, President Rodriguez and vice presidents of the assemblies as well. So happy to be able to share this moment with you. And we are honored by your visit to Venezuela. I'm one more of those militants of the Venezuela's opposition, the democratic opposition, that above all circumstance is betting on peace. We believe in peace, we work for peace, and we defend the national sovereignty. And in today's circumstances, we have left any differences aside, because today we are putting forward the situation in Venezuela. We are just one. We are one alone. We are talking about Venezuela as a whole. We are the representatives of the businessmen and workers, the students, the young generations and the elderly, those who are producing in the rural fields, and also sportsmen. I can give my word that thousands and thousands of Venezuelans in the past weeks have incorporated themselves with true enthusiasm to the tasks in defense of Venezuela. You are visiting today, you can go out to the streets. I would suggest that you come with us and we take you to our neighborhoods, our peoples inside the country, so that you can deal firsthand with a joyful, peaceful people, a people that is living here. And it's not just about the politics of one party, in this case, in the situation, in defense of the country, because this is about the entire of Venezuela that today is aiding the health of our sons and daughters. For years, you know, Venezuela had been under siege, and we have a war that today is a hybrid war, a decade of economical sanctions, extreme difficulties, because of an empire that tries to impose over our peoples. We were listening to the statements of the different parliamentarians at the Greater Caribbean Parliamentarian Meeting for Peace. Let's continue listening to what they were saying. What is absolutely incoherent about the narrative, the imperial narrative. They are saying that these are drug traffickers and that they should be completely assassinated. They are drug traffickers and they are violating with this international law and ending with the lives of these people in the Caribbean and the Pacific. But those who have survived the attacks, they have been handed over to their countries, Colombia, Ecuador, Mexico. So they are drug traffickers in order to a narco-terrorist to die, but not for a judicial procedure. So they even signaled that there wasn't any cause in order to submit them to a procedure to whoever survived those attacks against the vessels. Today, it's Venezuela, but tomorrow, it could be any of your nations. Today is Venezuela. Tomorrow, it could be even heightened in Cuba, in Nicaragua, Brazil, that has also faced that threatened of U.S. tariffs. It could be any of our countries, any of our nations in the Caribbean. Today it's Venezuela, but tomorrow it could be any of us. Latin America and the Caribbean, it's a zone of peace. Let's celebrate that peace. Nothing is more important than that. You, parliamentarians, foreign minister, it's a great pleasure to receive you here for any Venezuelan. Right here with us is the Act of Independence of Venezuela. The days that came after July of 1811, and we are surrounded by a work of art that shows those images of the final battle, the most important, even if there were just some combats. We're talking about Carabobo. To my right, you can see Simón Bolívar and his higher state. Here to my left, the generals Plaza and Cedeño, who were facing that Spanish army. Here you can see as well the workers and the peasants that came from that first division with great enthusiasm in order to win against that Spanish empire that at that moment oppressed them. And also the image of that first black man that gave his life in order for Venezuela to live in peace. We have this act of independence, and also with these historical images, we invite you to continue working together in the defense of peace for the Caribbean and our region. In the name of our leaders of Venezuela, welcome. You can be sure that we'll give our souls in defense of our dear nation, our dear country, and the peace in the continent and the Caribbean. Thank you. Those were the words of Eduardo Martinez, as he was also welcoming all the parliamentarians that are joining this greater Caribbean parliamentarian meeting that is taking place in Venezuela. We also heard from Jorge Rodriguez before, and Iván Gil as well, the foreign minister, who were welcoming these parliamentarians, again, from all the Caribbean nations.
From sovereignty and the unity of our people. With a patriotic, we transmitted to you the great of co-president from Nicaragua, Daniel Ortega Saavedra, and Rosario Murillo Zambrana, to the present parliamentarians, to the heroic Venezuelan people, to the constitutional president Nicolás Maduro, to its government, and to their firm and undefeatable army and security forces. We appreciate to Jorge Rodriguez, President of the Venezuelan Assembly, for its invitation to participate in this meeting, parliamentary meeting for peace, on the framework for in our job for sovereignty and peace, denouncing the U.S. military aggression. Insular countries in the Caribbean and continental countries at the south of the Bravo River, we are fighting every day for peace and and deny our right and main right for our existence that all of us defend with homeland love. The peace that we are defending is the justice peace, freedom, sovereignty, independence, self-determination, and dignity. It is what deeply are doing the Venezuelan brothers and sisters with a unity spirit to overcome. We are going to come together and will come together till the end. We are not fighting for the Roman peace of the cemeteries that this falling empire is trying to impose to us, or the country from the poor Europe. We are fighting for the peace of the free countries and are supporting the brothers from the Venezuelan Republic. We say again our solidarity with the Cuban people and the end of the blockade, the economical, commercial, and financial blockade, demanding to be excluded from horrible lists, our solidarity with the people of Iran in their fight against the imperial aggression. We reaffirm our solidarity with the Palestinian people and condemn the genocide for inhuman ends that want to slave the humanity. They haven't reached that objective, and they are never going to do it, because humanity is fighting, resisting, and overcoming, as Venezuelan people is doing. Seeing the effects of Melissa's hurricane, our solidarity with Jamaica, Cuba, Haiti, and other brother countries from the Caribbean. We are expressing our solidarity with the people and government from Colombia, to its president Gustavo Petro, who has faced the attacks from their threat of aggression, coercive measures, unilateral measures, from taxes imposed by Donald Trump, which with his expressions and a reflexive measure is violating the Colombia's sovereignty, the dignity of its country and their leadership, threatening the peace and stabilization of Latin America and the Caribbean. Nicaragua rejects that unusual way, aggressive way, sustained on lies and fake news that the President of the USA against the democratic leaders, progressive leaders from our America. The US government is fundamenting their aggression against Venezuela on the fake and the lie. They are trying to destroy the truth from Venezuela, making up a fake narration that they spread on based on the power they have on the media, trying to defeat the president, crime that they are not going to get. The so-called war against drugs has been essentially domination actions against our people and a geopolitical strategy to justify the intervention, the deployment of troops, the systematical violation of our sovereignty, the steal of our resources, natural resources, the imposition of arbitrary tax that deepen the problematic in our nations and territories. The government of USA, when they deployed warships, submarines, with the aim to attack Venezuela, they are agreeing also the international right, the United Nations Charter, the Tlatelolco Treaty, and the Latin American and the Caribbean as a zone of peace. They acted as criminals without law. countries from the region united, we have to dissuade them in order to avoid to repeat the history of the Spanish Empire repeat again. And we have to remember the historical gest of Simon Bolivar. We want to be friends of all countries in the world, to live in peace, to fight against poorness, to push for the human development. But there are powerful countries that act on the other way. We demand immediately the cease against the sovereignty and self-determination of Venezuela, and the going away from this ship in this zone, that they are a zone where our heroes fought, our ancestors fought. Nicaragua calls again their support to Nicolás Maduro, the constitutional president of the sister Republic of Venezuela, to the civic unit that is willingly to defend and overcome in this fight. Our people deserve to live in peace, stability, progress, and with the full right to decide their destiny with self-determination. Long live Venezuela and the Caribbean countries. Thank you very much.
The words of Denis Moncada, Foreign Minister of Nicaragua, in this meeting of parliamentarians of the Greater Caribbean with one objective, that is to address the military escalations and the threat of the U.S. that is not only targeting Venezuela but the region as a whole.
Thank you very much. Good morning, dear comrades, dear Jorge Rodriguez, President, dear Foreign Minister. We really appreciate your invitation to participate in this meeting, and our first words to greet on behalf of our delegation that is in here from the Popular National of Cuba, and especially from our President Esteban Lazo Hernandez, an affectionate hug to all the participants in this meeting, and especially to the brothers and sisters from the Caribbean. Also, our great is to the dear Bolivarian and Chavez people, to these Venezuelan people that is expressing also in this democratic exercise, in this level of convocatory, that is expressed also in this event, that is to preserve the peace. And with this great to the Venezuelan people is also to the legitimate president of the president of this country, and we really appreciate his preoccupation for the situation in Cuba after the hurricane, and he also called and took the solidarity to our country and made it also for Jamaica. This has also something to do with that message. We are greeting all the delegations present here, the one from Nicaragua, from El Alba, that speak a lot about the organization and the vocation of peace of this region. Not only the minister, but also the Alba that is manifested in this meeting. We want to express also to every one of the delegation from the Caribbean our satisfaction and the possibility so that we could make this meeting as the foreign minister from Nicaragua, our notes. It is a very big, revolutionary, proud to participate in this meeting, defending actively peace, which convocation brought. This is the answer of this summit to defend the peace, that it is not only for the lawmakers or the deputies, but it's a genuine willingness of our people, and that is a position, very legitimate position of our nation that we are doing this morning. In spite of the force of the nature of Melissa's hurricane, this terrible hurricane, not only in the Caribbean but also in the Caribbean, we are in here. I want to celebrate friendship and solidarity that we have received, not only with donation but also with the force of the friendship and solidarities that bring us together, all the Caribbean, other religion countries, and the world that have vocation for peace. This have another world effect that are the circumstances that all of our regions are living. That is important of this meeting that we're having. We want to say, and really our presence in here and our delegations, it is the first consensus. It is to acknowledge the importance of this meeting because we acknowledge what is happening in the Caribbean today and what is above the Caribbean today. A threat of war and this deployment of ships with an offensive character. It is unjustified with missiles, with assaulting and landing means. Also the CIA hand the authorization to make operations, underground operations, and we know very well the proposal, we know the clause. We don't have to wait for unclassified with the history, as in the history have shown in Cuba and other countries, even the aggressions that our people have suffered. We have to act. And this is what the President Jorge Rodriguez has done and Nicolas Maduro has done. The best way to win a war is to be prepared for it and to avoid it. And to avoid, we have to act in consequence. That was something that Fidel taught to us too. The motivation of USA, we know it. The justification, the pretext to combat the narco-traffic, the traffic of narcotics, the organized crime. These are arguments that we do not believe. They are arguments that we know. We know that the truth is another. We know the real motivations are in order to dominate, to colonization, to take hold on our resources, and especially the Venezuela resources that is very rich. They have oil. That is an envy for any country in the world. That is why that emphasizing in the resources of our region. And of course there is another, and it is the attack to the legitimate government that do not bend, and in order to undermine the sovereignty of our country, to be submitted to their willings. And from our heart, I would like to signal that they are mistaken when they subestimate us, underestimate us. We are free countries, sovereign countries, and we have the right to defend. We have the right to take the path, cultural path that we want, with independence and with international law. We have the right to be pronounced in this place and in any other place on the behalf of our people. Do not subestimate us, underestimate us. We don't like war, but if we have to fight, we are going to fight. And it's not going to be the first time that we're going to
those
overcome.
were the words of Manny Machado from Cuba, Vice President of the National Assembly of the Larger of the Antilles.
Policy and not any kind of domination in Latin America and the Caribbean. It was the document expressed that sustained this vocation of peace that was reaffirmed in Havana and the Declaration of America Latina as a zone of peace. That is the movement that we have to show, because this the vocation of our people. We're a big enemy on the north, but this is what we are keeping on. That was ratified in Havana with the signature of the government, the head of state, and we have the photo here where all the presidents are in there. that was sealed, that when the war was in war, the people of our region understood that the peace was the path, and we cannot forget this forever. And of course, it is categorical the rejection of Cuba to the proposal, the threatening proposal, that is peace by force. This theory has taken too many justifications, but we reject it because it is like imposing all of us the arbitrary willing of who? Of the imperialism, North American peace. For us, that imperialism, that position of the U.S. government using threat, coercion, aggression, and provocation are not acceptable. And this is our position that we are presenting to you, what is happening right now in the scenario that we are facing. The succession of facts, the events, with the attack and destruction of boats without knowing the destination, the killing extrajudicially. That is very important to say that, because what Jorge Rodriguez was saying, civilians that I cannot say the cipher, 60, close to 60, the people that have been killed because there are unthinkable things in order to seek for provoking in this region. The interception of ships, fish ship, and the provoking of USA, it is a very dangerous conjuncture. They threaten the peace and the national security. And thinking about fishermen, dear President George, I'm also thinking about the history of Cuba, when not a few fishermen and ship were attacked and offended in high sea, and we lost comrades. And these are terrorist acts. During these acts, the government of U.S. government has done to the Cuban people. And not for all, they are not dangerous, and that there is a constant threat. This situation, I am not exaggerating, it is generating a big reject in our country. And that is another position to justify our meeting in here. We reaffirm a big rejection against our people. This threat against Venezuela, we reject it. And our full support to the Bolivarian government from this sister country and this union, military, civic, military, and policial, that is also the Bolivarian people, headed by led by President Maduro. It is not only a principle of the Cuban people, a friendship of the exercising of our foreign policy. Our people, with more than 4,300,000, more than 16 years, over 16 years, proudly, we did with a great pride, together with our General Raúl Castro Ruz and Díaz-Canel, we ratified the declaration of the government, Revolutionary of Cuba, to backing the government of Venezuela. That is something that is concrete, that we can express with these strong convictions of to be brothers of our country, something that we could do for any just cause in the world. In any signature, there was the beat of a people that did not bend, that expressed their solidarity, inspired in the Martian Bolivarian, especially when Martí said to Venezuela, "Tell me, Venezuela, in what to serve. You have in me a son." And I want to highlight it. Fidel and Chavez, though they are not in present, they strengthen it with concrete action. And we are brothers. We are only one country, Cuba and Venezuela. Fidel and Chavez are also here with us.
Bien, escuchaban la declaración de la diputada Ana María Machado.
Statements of Ana Maria Machado. Again.
For Venezuela, we have to give everything. And that is what inspired the strengthening, permanent, and daily our solidarity. A live example in every worker, collaborator of this solidarity and collaboration between both countries that goes along with these people, Chavez people, with any one of these missions that we have in here. When we, as 25 years, Fidel was in here, October the 27th in this parliament, and I want to highlight something, if you allowed me, a use of time using the word. There is a deputy that is coming in here, Joel Sanquecuella, that very young, he came in here with Fidel in that delegation, and for our proud, this guy who was studying at time today, he's a deputy, he's a director of Grama newspaper, he's a member of the Council of State, and he came with that comrade, Fidel, in that delegation, and he's with us right now. An aggression, a direct aggression against Venezuela have a number of consequences for peace and security in America, as we have said in here. And solidarity with Venezuela goes together with the other peoples that could suffer this attack, direct or indirectly way, from the U.S. imperialism, with this permanent threat that have been expressing here, and particularly with the big Caribbean. That's why it is a necessity to reinforce and act in consequence with it. We express also our solidarity and for the courageous position of Gustavo Petro, who in a courageous way denounced this position in the USA and is a victim right now with threats as like the Colombian people too. We would like just in this gesture of unity that Colombia is present. The U.S. government and some of their their best answer, it is the exercise of unity, and it is always important to practice it always. The constant attack against Cuba and Venezuela are daily attacks, and Nicaraguan brothers, they know the suffering that they bring along to our people. And a recent example, I bring it into collection because, George, it is something that manipulation and aggression and trying to separate our countries. It is the exclusion of the next summit of the Americas, of Cuba, Nicaragua, Venezuela. This is another element that is manifested, but we know that the People's Summit is the best answer, and is the answer that the U.S. government is going to receive. Against Cuba, the acting is enormous, but we are going to resist, as we did with the resolution that was mentioned in here against the blockade, the last 29th of October, where the majority of the countries in the world once more led the USA and some of their lackeys as a result of the votation. We really agree the position of all these countries to vote in favor of Cuba with this resolution, now very aggressive, that finding on USA that some countries vary the exercise of the vote, but the answer was very strong. As a result, give us strength on the victory. On anything that they try to asphyxiate us, and they want to appropriate from all the geographic spaces in our region. To all, thank you very much, and I want to appreciate in this very strong victory that Caribbean community states that the president could speak about on behalf of the Caribbean. That is one that we really appreciate for what means CARICOM for us. That's why I want to appreciate what they did for us with their vote. George, that's why I will appreciate also, George, that's why we are here. We want to spread something. We have to make proposals that we can assess, but we have to express and work in the first place to defend that the Caribbean is a peace zone, that its richness is ratified to the big Caribbean. That declaration of America, Latin America, and the Caribbean as a peace zone, it is enforced today to the Great Caribbean. To the legislation of our countries goes along with this position of our moment on their names in Havana when it was signed in 2014. We also defend the peace. It's not only defend the proclama, but also to defend the peace, to reject the wars, aggression, provocations, imperials. So we can have difference in thinking, but there is the supreme wellness. That is the life of our people. And to protect the peace is to protect the life of the citizens of our regions. And I said something, I will add something. We have to add life not only in our region, but also the U.S. people, because if there is a war, there will be dead people on their side too. So we are calling the region, but also to the United States people. If we are going to combat, we are going to be on the first line too. That's not a necessity. We don't want dead people. We want peace. And remember poetry, a very one from Indian Abori, a poet from the revolution. At the beginning of the revolution, with the threat of the wars, he made a letter that was called letter from a Cuban mother to a U.S. mother too. That could be a letter from the Caribbean Sea, the mothers from the Latin America to the mothers from the United States. That is the message of peace. That's also that we want to. Of course, this defense from peace, diversity, we have also to say that is the independence, the political affiliation. The biggest wellness is the peace, the life of our people. Promote by all means the activation, but there is a mediatic offensive to find a deep consciousness of the threat that is above the region in all spaces, in all communication means, in our ways. There are many different ways that we can do just according to the characteristics of our country, not only Venezuela, Colombia, Cuba, or Nicaragua. The reach involves all of us, including the territory of the United States. This is something that we have to work from the point of view of the risk of a war in the region. We also propose to extend a call to preserve the peace in the region, to avoid a war, not only for our national parliaments. I pronounce something that it is said in here. The first thing that we have to say is to see the backing of all the countries in the region, also the ones that are not in here, of our national parliaments, of those, not only in these national offices. We need to promote urgently in international parliamentarian organs that we have. So we have to debate all these topics, urgent topics, and we have to take it to the Parlatino and to debate what it is all above the Caribbean. If we have, this is the moment to find the back in the position of our representative in relation with this war threatening. And I can say another parliament, regional parliament, Parlasem, and we have another sceneries, also because of the importance that we have to work. To make, especially from this forum, a call to the congressmen and senators in USA, and even with the presence of this media we are doing already, to demand stop the threats of these deliberated actions of the U.S. government against our people. We don't want the threat of the U.S. We do not deserve. Our people want the peace, and this call should be done by the by the congressmen and senators, and to know the effects of a war and the mourn of families in which the families of USA are going to be included. This is a call that we are doing to these senators and congressmen to promote in the world public opinion and in the people of US itself, people that we have never seen as an enemy, and we have said that they are guilty for these threats. Here we have a press pronounced that have done, and they did at the moment with the war against Vietnam, or Martin Luther King, or globalization in other aspects. We have to mobilize the opinion of the American people on this threat of war against our region, to promote a campaign that we are saying to promote for the good public in a very intelligent way, a very beautiful way, to demand the USA government as the same way that we were saying in international spheres, to demand the US government that the resources, the millions that they are wasting today in this bellicist career, that is a competence of them in destruction and death, to invest on this, to be destined to kill poverty for development and cooperation in benefit not only for the South people, but also it was expressing here to do it in benefit on the millions of citizens from USA that live in an inhuman situation, and of course that the ones that are consuming from drugs, that is the space consumed that they have in there, and something that they do not mention so often, but they know that they have in their policy that to pay the debt that they have with other governments. That is not a feudum, that is a position that we can do to remember that empire, to see the problems that they have and not to interfere in our problems with this kind of interference. And it's something that we can do, to work together and to say, and we call again, and we take Cuba support the just causes of humanity, facing and the fight against fascism, racism, the cruel blockades, coercive measures that are imposed by the U.S. government. This is another thing that we have to have in present, and all policy they are applying. And it was, as was stated before, we suffer it every day. We have reached that is an extraordinary one. Close to the 100 years of our Commander-in-Chief Fidel Castro, that is going to be next year, that we are doing some activities, and Fidel is always present in all these spaces. What Fidel would say in these spaces, what would say Chavez in these spaces, and I would like to remember some words of Fidel's. In the meantime that there is imperialism, in the meantime that there is a victim from the aggression, In the meantime, there are people fighting against imperialism. Their cause are going to be our cause in any corner of the world. And this is our cause, to defend peace, to defend stability in our region. To our nations, I want to express we are not joined just by the sea. And these are the words of poets in our delegation. It's not only the sea what is uniting. We have a proper history, traditions, culture, and we have many things, even to fight against the climatic change that is hurting us. But the Great Caribbean, more than the portion in the world, it is a big expression of a feeling, and that feeling is love, the love that joined together. And this is something that have to mobilize us. Love can with everything to work together. Long live the unity and peace among our people. Stop the threat against peace and stability in Latin America and Caribbean. And of course, till the victory forever. We'll overcome.
The statements of the Vice President of the National Assembly of Cuba, Manny Machado, as she was taking part of this parliamentarian meeting in Venezuela. That is a meeting for peace, a meeting that is set to address U.S. threats in the region. Let's continue listening to the statements. Good afternoon. Good afternoon to everyone. Well, in the first place, I want to greet the President of the National Assembly, Jorge Rodriguez, to the Foreign Minister of the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela, Ivan Gil, Foreign Minister of Nicaragua, our dear Foreign Minister Moncada, I'm sorry, and all parliamentarians that are here, especially those who have organized this important meeting. And I want to greet this important step that you have taken for sovereignty and peace in Venezuela. In that sense, all the parliamentarians of democratic opposition and of Chavism that have integrated with other instances of the state this important space of defense of sovereignty of Venezuela and of the sovereignty of our Caribbean. Very briefly, I would like to express in the name of Colombia of what we represent as a dream of the integration of brotherly nations. From the delegation that is joining us as well in this event, Senator Jais Quiroga, Senator Sandra Ramirez, Deputy Lozano, our social leader, unionist, Rafael Gomez, that we are here and we're bringing our voice with our call to peace that is inspiring the Colombian people, that has been taken in a very decisive way by the government of change that is led by Gustavo Petro. That we are speaking of an armed conflict and continuous conflicts that have hindered the possibility of our country of having the peace after our independence struggles, as Simón Bolívar was at the head of those battles like Boyacá. That integration inspires us. And that way of seeking peace is also our commitment to overcome years of violence that have hurt so much the Colombian society and also our neighborly countries because of the exile, because of the displacement of so many territories that belong to rural workers, indigenous people, and their descendants, that if we want peace, and we're fighting for peace in the country, our decisive task is to guarantee that decision from the peoples of Latin America and the Caribbean of making of this continent a territory of peace. And that decision is completely strong from our people and our will to peace, and it's also joined with the decision of our president and also the political parties and social organizations that are accompanying him in order to work for national sovereignty, for national independence, and also the legacy, not only of our liberators, but also of our political constitution, to guarantee with foreign policy the integration of our peoples of Latin America and the Caribbean. The stance that has emerged from the President of the Republic, that was also recognized by other peoples and governments of the world at the United Nations, is precisely that of making clear the key points of what is happening in the world, what are the main challenges, and how a country like Colombia that has fought against the drug of the government, against a war, against war that has only been the pretext in order to strengthen domination of the United States over our country through strategies like Plan Colombia or the militarization of our own territories. That strategy and that so-called war on drugs that has failed has had, on behalf of the government of Gustavo Petro, an answer so effective, such as any other in history, in response to organized crime, drug trafficking mafias, seizing tons of cocaine, seizing also, of course, marijuana, also material that are being used in order to produce cocaine, seizing as well the shipment of cocaine to other places of the world. But the answer of the government of Trump was to decertify our government, despite the important figures that were presented in this direct combat against drug trafficking and organized crime. Organized crime and drug trafficking that is not only using drugs as one of the great engines of the economy, but is also articulating this with other crimes at an international level that is affecting our peoples. Like, next to drug trafficking and its cartels is also human trafficking, of which Venezuela has been a victim, because behind migration that has many cases been induced by different sectors, there's also a great market that has made of many Venezuelans be victims of labor exploitation or subject of other crimes like sexual exploitation, the selling of human organs, and other crimes that affect our continent and the world. It's the exploitation of illegal mining, drug trafficking, human trafficking, smuggling, arms smuggling, and they're crimes that are being articulated and need a response, a much more organized response from our peoples and governments in order to face this properly. The drug cartels are not in the country, but they are placed in different countries, and there is a world combination that exists and demands from our part a high-level response. CELAC that is going to meet soon in this summit that is CELAC of Latin America in Santa Marta, where our liberator Simón Bolívar died. That will be one of the places that will take in the representatives of governments of Latin America and the Caribbean and also European Union. That will be an important context in order to deal with important proposals that go beyond declarations, in order to build a regional architecture that is able to answer and give answers to these challenges and break with dependency to a war on drugs that is being imposed by the North that has failed and is only a pretext in order to intervene and destroy our dreams of integration and a great homeland so that our countries work towards social justice and independence. That is one of the important topics that we want to take towards that CELAC summit. And for the gathering with social movements where parliamentarians and political parties, we want to bring initiatives regarding this very harsh threat that has never been seen, at least in the past years, in the Caribbean, that is trying to intervene with military force, initially with Venezuela, but we know that that presence may be directed against any peoples of the world that has the dignity and the strength to stand up to the empire. That is why we also believe that besides standing up against that threat against Venezuela and its government and anything and everything that continuity of strength means, we also need to stand up in complete solidarity with Cuba, that today more than ever needs the backing of all our governments and all our parliaments, because they are also being submitted to a great pressure and threat, and we always need to keep in mind that need to sustain an irrestrictive support to our brotherly people of Cuba that has been such a beacon for all the peoples of the world. We want to bring here some initiatives very much linked to the proposals of Ana Maria that could allow us to maintain this exchange and the space of political exchange from the parliament. I think that we need to make a reflection here that beyond the work that we can develop in our parliaments and our parliamentarian spaces, we need to move forward in an exchange that allows us to articulate a higher relationship between the political parties, the organizations, and the governments. Aside, we do not have the same effect, but if we are able to make that cohesive integration between the peoples, the parliaments, and the political parties in unified actions, we are going to achieve a higher impact. And we need, in that sense, a great calling for a great mobilization, Latin America and the Caribbean, brought together by that articulation, so that the government, the progressive governments, and also the parliaments, and also the political parties and social movements, and wherever we do not have those progressive governments, we'll do it through those political parties and social movements, and also local authorities, in order to have a greater impact. We also join the need for an open call from the integration parliaments in order to have a greater incidence in its own governments, we need to have a greater impact in order to call for an urgent meeting from Latin America and the Caribbean, even if we have a harsh correlation of forces, in order to have a meeting that we can bring together artists. If these processes have anything, have the force of artists of Latin America and the Caribbean, we have the forces of cultures that have made us. We have this beautiful proposal that can be developed from this Caribbean, that is the heart of this region because of the force of the culture that can call and draw upon a series of international support from arts and cultures as well, in order to transcend, in order intellectuals as well, for their voices to raise in this context, and also the need to move forward in a constructive way among us in a great global network in order to face this moment that is not just a challenge for Latin America and the Caribbean, but for the world as a whole. What we have here is an attack against progressive governments, against the people that have decided to build a different destiny, different than dependency. What we have here is a response against that multipolar world that we are working for, and also for the political context that also involves Africa, Asia, Europe, in the need to make significant steps towards a multipolar world, and not only those who pretend from the North, the Latin American and Caribbean, continue to be for them their background. That we have, that is what is underneath and in the background of this entire process. We are not going to allow this, as we were saying it, from our republic. We do not want our border from Colombia and Venezuela to become a Gaza. That was the will of our government. We are denouncing that. We are not going to allow that the empire treat us as they try to do to Palestine, because Latin America and Caribbean need to be respected as a territory of peace, and we will be respected as well, raising what many people are lacking, that is the dignity and the dignity of our greater homeland that have been stepped upon for many, even for those who are generating right next to the empire hatred towards its own people, so that the people of Latin America and Caribbean may rise against anyone who, in alliance with the empire, is trying to destroy its own people. This is the time to speak clearly to our compatriots in the United States, those migrants who went there in order to seek opportunities, and from that land have been persecuted. They have been treated as criminals. Those Latin American families that are many in that land of the United States, they deserve an important connection in order for that to continue fighting against that monster that wants to bring blood to our territory, that has decided to be sovereign and free and a peaceful region for the dream of the greater homeland. Thank you so much. Those were the statements of Gloria Flores, Senator from Colombia, in this parliamentary meeting. Let's continue listening. We continue, and we are looking at the images. Recent images from Venezuela. Those were the meetings of the parliamentarians. We're looking at this. That was a recent statement from Venezuela, the meeting of parliamentarians, as we were just saying, an important meeting that was set to address the recent threats, U.S. military threats for Venezuela, but in general for the entire region. We will have more on this and other topics, so stay tuned with teleSUR English.